Ruth Ellis is a charming model, the owner of a prestigious nightclub and the mother of 2 children, whose fatal passion led her to the murder of a young lover. Her name is forever inscribed in the criminal history of Great Britain. She became the last woman in the country to be sentenced to capital punishment. The other day, the premiere of the miniseries Cruel Love, the story of Ruth Ellis, an adaptation of the acclaimed novel by Carol Ann Lee, took place. The project has rekindled interest in the tragic fate of a woman who just wanted to be loved. They say that dazzlingly beautiful women have a difficult fate in advance. This story is a frightening and magnetic proof of that. Ruth was born on October 9, 1926, in Dank, Wales. Her father, Arthur Hornby, was a talented cellist whose career gradually sank to the bottom of the bottle. Money was sorely lacking in a large family, and her father's addiction turned Ruth's childhood into a series of hardships. However, her mother, Bertha, as if defending herself from the grim reality, constantly inspired her little daughter. "You were born for more. Your life will be special." Ellis absorbed this mantra. She lived with the unshakable certainty that one day the gray poverty would be replaced by a dazzling life from Hollywood movies. In 1941, when Ruth turned 15, the family moved to London, which had not yet recovered from the bombing. Her father got a job as a chauffeur, and young Ruth went to work as a waitress. The hustle and energy of the recovering metropolis quickly overwhelmed the energetic provincial. She realized that the brightest survive in this city. The girl radically changed her image. Her business card became a dazzling platinum blonde. She plunged headlong into metropolitan life. She danced in clubs, made useful acquaintances, and behaved as if she had never known need. There were hundreds of people who wanted to treat the pretty blonde with a cocktail. Soon, London gave her not only a gloss, but also her first serious crush. Her chosen one was a Canadian soldier of French origin. Blinded by her feelings, Ruth did not immediately find out that his wife and children were waiting for him in his homeland. The affair ended as quickly as it began. The soldier returned overseas, leaving 19-year-old Ruth with a broken heart and a child under her heart. In 1945, she gave birth to a son, whom she named Andy. The salary of a simple waitress was sorely lacking to raise a child. The family, burdened with 4 more children and an alcoholic father, could not help. Realizing that she could only rely on herself, Ruth relied on her attractiveness and slender figure, starting a modeling career. In post-war London, semi-enclosed studios where girls posed in the nude style were popular. It was there that Ruth began to earn her first serious money. Such a job inevitably brought her into contact with the bohemians, shady dealers, and criminal bosses of London's Soho. She soon came to the attention of Morris Conley, Maury, a wealthy businessman with an extremely dubious reputation. An avid gambler and owner of an underground brothel, Conley appreciated Ruth's acumen and offered her a job. At first, she was a hostess, keeping order in the apartments, but in 9 years of cooperation, she grew up to be the manager of the prestigious The Little Club. Now she had everything: expensive dresses, an obscenely high salary, and elite acquaintances. However, the facade of success had to be paid for. Conley regularly demanded intimacy from Ruth, and in fits of rage he brutally beat her. Amid the eternal revelry, cigar smoke, and the clink of glasses, Ruth did not forget about her son. When Andy turned 5, she desperately wanted to give him a stable family. In 1950, in one of the bars, she met George Ellis, a divorced dentist 17 years older than her. Ruth grabbed onto him like a lifeline. But hopes for a safe haven collapsed. George turned out to be a heavy drinker and a pathological jealous man. The marriage lasted less than a year, turning into a series of terrible scandals. In 1951, after the actual separation, Ruth gave birth to his daughter Georgina. They never officially divorced. Left with 2 children and a mountain of debts, Ellis was forced to swallow her pride and return to the protection of domineering Conley. Ruth had dozens of fleeting affairs and wealthy patrons. But the same all-consuming love that her mother had told her about as a child overtook her unexpectedly and cruelly. In 1953, David Blakely joined her club. 24. A summer aristocrat, a racing driver, and a spoiled rake. He moved in high society, drank expensive champagne, and his only real passion was sports cars. Ruth, an adult who had seen life, she was 3 years older than him, lost her head. David was engaged to another woman, but for the sake of the platinum blonde broke off the engagement and moved into her apartment. Their relationship has become a classic illustration of destructive, emotional swings. In order to somehow secure her future and children, Ruth began dating Desmond Casson, a former Royal Air Force pilot and a successful company director. Ruth understood perfectly well that David's snobbish environment would never accept a former nude model and a club manager with 2 children by different men. But that didn't stop her. She snapped at him at the first call, paid for his racing car parts, endured open infidelity, and begged for a drop of attention on her knees. From nervous exhaustion, she began mixing antidepressants prescribed by her doctor with strong alcohol, slowly sinking into the abyss of paranoia and despair. The point of no return was passed in the spring of 1955. Shortly before the tragedy, during another argument, a drunken David punched Ruth in the stomach, causing her to miscarry. But even after losing the baby, she couldn't let him go. They were planning an Easter weekend trip together with 10-year-old Andy, but Blakely just disappeared. Insulted and exhausted, Ruth came to visit his friends, the Findlater couple. David cowardly hid in the house and did not come out. In a rage, Ruth trashed his car. The next day, attempts to contact him also failed. Blakely decided to end the relationship, which he was bored with, in English. But he underestimated the extent of the woman's madness, which he himself brought to the edge. On Easter evening, April 10, 1955, Ruth Ellis, armed with a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, went in search of her. It is noteworthy that the reliable Desmond Casson drove her to the place. She found David outside the Magdala pub in the prestigious Hampstead area. Blakely, holding beer bottles in his hands, was walking to his car in the company of his friend Clive Gunnell. "David!" Ruth called out to him. He ignored her. She called out again, simultaneously raising the heavy revolver. The first bullet whizzed by. Terrified, David tried to hide behind his friend, but it didn't save him. The second shot knocked the rider to the asphalt. Coming up close, Ruth, with chilling composure, put 4 more bullets into the lying man. One of them ricocheted off the paving stones and injured a bystander. Ruth didn't even try to hide. She stood over the bloody body of the only man she truly loved and calmly waited for the police. Upon the arrival of the officers, she herself held out her hands for handcuffs with the words, "I am guilty. I killed him." Amazingly, since her arrest, Ruth Ellis has regained absolute, frightening calm. During the interrogations, she did not shy away and described in great detail exactly how she planned the murder. The press instantly exploded. The story of a glamorous blonde from Soho who shot dead a renegade aristocrat was on the front pages of the Daily Mirror and other newspapers. The audience was divided. Some demanded blood, others sympathized with the victim of abuse. A psychiatric examination found her completely sane. Ruth herself, before the main trial of her life, asked the jailers for only one thing: to allow her to lighten her overgrown dark hair roots so that she could appear before the jury in all her glory. On June 20th, 1955, she entered the Old Bailey courtroom in an elegant black suit and an immaculate white blouse. The lawyers went out of their way trying to save her from the gallows. They talked about the brutal beatings, the miscarriage, the cynicism of the murdered man. The public was ready to forgive the woman who had stumbled. It was only necessary to declare a state of passion. But when the prosecutor asked a crucial question about her intentions at the moment when she pointed the revolver, Ruth, with aristocratic dignity, uttered the phrase that signed her death sentence. "It is obvious that when I shot him, I intended to kill him." In the UK of the 50s, premeditated murder was punishable by only one way: death by hanging.